Chapter 51, A City That Teaches Them to Dream. The newcomers found bundles laid neatly on their beds. Soft wool tunics dyed in the rich reds and deep browns of Narnia. Cloaks lined with fur against the northern chill, boots of toughened hide that would not split in the mud. Maria gasped when she lifted Nina's little dress, finely stitched with lion embroidery. "We cannot," she began, but Lyanna only shook her head. "You're Narnians now. Every Narnian must be clothed against the cold, and no one goes wanting here." Doran laughed as he tugged on a heavy cloak. "Better than anything I've owned since I was a boy." By sunrise, work already began. Master Rorik, a square-shouldered man with mortar in his beard, clapped Doran on the back and shoved a trowel into his hands. "We'll see if you can cut a straight line in stone," he said gruffly, though the twinkle in his eye betrayed approval. Doran threw himself into the work, hauling stones, laying mortar, and laughing with the crew as if he had belonged for years. Oliver found his place in the mill, the great wheel turning steadily under his guidance. 2 young boys, apprentices barely into their teens, were assigned to him. "Load the hopper slow, lads," Oliver told them, "and keep your ears sharp. A stone will tell you when she's had enough." Flour dust clung to his hair and beard before the first hour was done, but he wore it like a badge of honor. Meanwhile, Sirius had other plans for the children. "Come with me," he told Elsa and Nina with a wolfish grin. "If you're to live in Thelmar, you should see more than stone walls and kitchens." The city unfolded before them in a rush of sound and color. Narrow streets brimming with stalls of fruit, cloth, and trinkets. Bells clanging from the smithies. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifting through the crisp air. Sirius cut through the crowds with easy confidence, a hand on Nina's shoulder when she lingered too long at a toy stand. He led them to the heart of Thelmar, where a wide park stretched like a green jewel amid the stone. It had been Harry's idea to give the city's children a place that was theirs, and the park was alive with laughter. Wooden climbing towers and rope bridges swayed with scrambling boys and girls. A wheel contraption spun shrieking children round and round. Smooth planked slides ended in piles of soft straw. Elsa and Nina froze at the sight, wide-eyed. "Go on," Sirius urged with a chuckle. "It won't bite you." Nina bolted first, scrambling up a ladder while Elsa more cautiously balanced across a log beam. Soon enough both were laughing, swept into the tide of children. Sirius sat himself on a bench under a tall ash tree, watching with folded arms. Several parents nearby recognized him and offered nods of respect, but Sirius only grinned and waved them off. When the games ended, Sirius gathered the girls and marched them toward the far side of the park, where soldiers trained in neat ranks. The clang of steel rang out, sharp and proud. Elsa's mouth parted at the sight of armored men and women sparring, their blades flashing in the sun. "They're amazing," Elsa whispered. "They are," Sirius agreed. "Every man and woman here trains to protect this city. And one day, if you wish, you might hold a blade yourself. Not to kill, but to defend what's yours." The girls listened with rapt attention, clutching his words as tightly as they had clutched the ropes on the playground. Later, as the sun slanted low, Sirius spotted a familiar horse cart rattling past. He waved and called out, "Kellen!" The driver pulled to a stop, laughing as Sirius helped the girls onto the cart. "To the harbor?" Kellen asked knowingly. "Aye," Sirius said. "They've never seen a ship." The cart rumbled through the streets, down toward the smell of salt and tar. The harbor unfolded in a sweep of masts and sails, gulls wheeling and crying overhead. Elsa and Nina gasped aloud. Dozens of ships, from stout merchant cogs to sleek fishing vessels, bobbed at anchor, their rigging singing in the wind. Sailors shouted to one another, barrels rolled across planks, and nets heavy with silver fish glittered in the fading light. Nina gripped the railing with both hands, her eyes wide. "They're like castles, but floating." Elsa said nothing at first, simply staring at the tallest mast as if trying to measure its height against the sky. Sirius stood beside them, his tone softening. "Ships are freedom. They can take you to lands you've never dreamed of. But they're dangerous too. The sea doesn't forgive fools." He let that lesson hang a moment, then smiled again. "Next time I'll bring Daddy. When he's with us, you'll be allowed to board. For now, you look, and you dream." The girls nodded solemnly, clutching the memory tight. With Lyanna's guidance, Elsa was enrolled into the school just like the rest of the children in Thelmar. Every morning, a sturdy horse-drawn carriage rolled up to the gates of Gryffindor Castle. Painted with the crest of Narnia, it was large enough to carry more than a dozen children, its benches lined with laughing faces. The children of stewards, masons, soldiers, and kitchen hands all piled in together, and now Elsa joined them, clutching her small satchel with excitement. Nina watched her sister with wide eyes, still too young to attend but eager for the day she could. She would follow the carriage until it disappeared down the road, waving until Elsa waved back from the window. For Doran, Oliver, Maria, and Beth, this simple routine was nothing short of astonishing. They had grown up in the north with grim tales of the wildlings beyond the wall, barbarians who lived in skins, who stole and killed, who raised their children like wolves. Yet here, in Harry's kingdom, those same people had schools greater than any they had seen in White Harbor. Children were not left to run wild but were gathered together each morning, taught to read and write, to count numbers, to learn stories of history and songs of courage. And every afternoon, the same carriage brought them safely home again. When Elsa returned from her very first day, she came bursting into the hall with a wide smile, clutching her new school supplies as if they were treasures. "Look!" she cried, spreading them out on the long table. A neat stack of parchment, 2 quills with fresh ink bottles, and a small reader bound in thick cloth. "They gave me these, and there's more books at the school, whole shelves of them, and we learned how to write our names, and they taught us numbers too." And she stopped only to catch her breath, cheeks flushed with joy. Maria stared, hands pressed to her mouth. Beth reached out to touch the quill as if it were made of gold. Oliver shook his head slowly, wonder in his eyes. "In Westeros, only lordlings' children got such things," he muttered. "Not a miller's daughter, not a builder's kin." Elsa rattled on, describing the massive school in Thelmar. She told them about the high windows that let in sunlight, the rows of desks where every child had their own place, and the great black slate where the teacher wrote letters so big the whole room could see. She described lessons in reading and writing, in numbers and sums, and even in history, though she admitted she had nodded off when the tale of old kings went on too long. Uncle Oliver chuckled at that, ruffling her hair. "History puts grown men to sleep too, little one. You're not the first." "And Aunt Beth," Elsa added earnestly. "There were girls there too, not just boys, all of them learning the same things. They said when we are older we'll learn other things too, like plants and healing and maybe music." Beth blinked, her throat tight. "You'll grow cleverer than all of us," she whispered. Elsa beamed, hugging her mother and then Nina, who was already tugging at the quill, begging her sister to show her how to write. From the doorway, Harry and Lyanna watched quietly. Maria's tears, Oliver's stunned expression, Doran's slow nod. All of it told Harry more than words could. They had come from a land where survival meant hunger and suspicion. Now they stood in a hall where their children would grow with books in their hands instead of fear. Lyanna leaned toward Harry, her voice soft. "They'll never forget who gave them this." Harry said nothing, only watching as Elsa bent over the parchment, carefully drawing the first shaky letters of her name while Nina clapped in delight. With Elsa gone to school during the day, Sirius found himself spending more time with Nina. The two of them were often joined by Hilda, the steward's daughter with quick hands and quicker laughter, and Rorik's boy Edric, whose father was the master builder overseeing much of Gryffindor Castle's expansion. They were all of an age, and though small, the four carried themselves with the bright energy of children who lived in a city that belonged to them. What fascinated them most, however, was Harry's training of the skin changers. From the shadow of a low wall, or peering through the slats of a half-built gallery, the children would sit for hours, whispering to each other as they watched. Harry now had nearly 50 students under his care. They came from every corner of Narnia, wildling-born, clan-born, even the odd orphan taken in by the new city. All of them bore the gift of skin-changing. Some were teenagers, already lanky and restless. Others were as young as Sirius himself, still clutching small stuffed toys when they thought no one was looking. The training yard was filled with the sound of caws, growls, and hisses. Birds wheeled in the sky, foxes darted between the legs of students, and the occasional bear cub snorted as a child's mind brushed its own. Harry walked among them, calm and certain, his voice steady as he instructed. "Feel the rhythm of the heart. Let the beast's breath become your breath. Do not force it. Invite it." The children whispered to each other in awe. "Did you see that?" Sirius pointed as a boy of 12 closed his eyes, and a hawk perched nearby spread its wings in sudden harmony. Nina gasped. "It's like magic inside magic." Hilda folded her arms, trying to sound wise. "Lord Gryffindor makes it look easy, but it's not." Edric nodded. Maida says only great lords in the old stories had gifts like this. And now, look, they're all in one place. Sirius's eyes shone, though his tone was thoughtful. It's more than magic. Father says this will bind Narnia together. If children grow with animals as kin, they'll never be wild in the way our kin used to be. The four fell silent at that, listening as Harry guided one of the smallest pupils, a girl barely older than them, who was struggling to reach a gray hare's mind. His patience, his encouragement, the way the child finally gasped in delight when she felt the animal stir. All of it seemed like something holy. Life for the newcomers had quickly settled into rhythm. Each week there was one day when work stopped entirely. It was not wasted idleness but a day set apart. Families dressed in their cleanest tunics and cloaks and made their way into Thelmar. The temples were full on those days, each built in the style of the old gods. High pillars carved with runes, halls filled with flickering lamps and bowls of offerings. Maria and Oliver, Doran and Beth, all went in hesitation at first, but soon they found themselves comforted by the ritual. The markets and restaurants bustled with life afterward. Families dined together, trying dishes flavored with herbs they had never known, or salted meats prepared in the southern style. The men often drifted toward the pubs, mugs of foaming ale in hand, while children tugged their parents back toward the parks, the fountains, and the wide plazas where minstrels played. It was on these days of rest that Elsa and Nina first began to hear the old stories of Odin, Thor, and Frigga. Priests told them in solemn voice within the temples, and old men repeated them by firelight in the public squares. Sirius, who always listened closely, repeated them later to Hilda and Edric, retelling them in his own sharp, precise way. Elsa, quick-minded from her new schooling, was fascinated by the sagas. Nina's eyes shone at the thunderous tales of Thor battling giants. Slowly but surely, the children came to see themselves as part of something greater, a people bound not only by walls and work, but by faith. For Harry, this was no accident. He knew that faith gave shape to a nation. Through religion, through shared belief, even the fiercest wildling could learn to temper their fury and turn it into loyalty. Civilization was not built on stone alone. It needed stories, gods, and the promise that their lives were watched and weighed. And so, as the weeks passed, the northern newcomers found themselves changing. They prayed in the temples. They sang the songs. They watched their children learning letters and sums, manners and tales. What they once thought barbarism had revealed itself as something far richer, deeper, and more ordered than any hall south of the wall. Chapter 52 Into the Frozen Unknown. Time in Thelmar passed swiftly. The rhythm of work and rest, of training and laughter, had settled into something that resembled peace. Doran returned each evening weary but satisfied, hands covered in mortar dust, while Oliver came home from the mill with flour on his sleeves and pride in his eyes. Maria and Beth had found their place among the kitchens, laughing more often than they had in years. Elsa woke each morning eager for school, and Sirius spent his afternoons roaming with Nina, Hilda, and Edric, always watching, always learning. But Harry himself could not rest easy. He felt the pull of something greater, a whisper on the wind beyond the wall. At night, in the silence of the Gryffindor cast library, he sometimes caught himself staring northward, as if the very stones of the castle urged him to be ready. It was then that Harry turned his mind toward an old dream, one he had never pursued in his youth. The animagus transformation. His father had done it. Sirius Black, his godfather, had mastered it too. Remus Lupin had never been alone on full moons because of them. For years, Harry had longed to learn but had never had the time, the space, or the guidance. Now, with the Black family library at his disposal, he had found what he needed. A slim, weathered volume bound in green leather, tucked among darker tomes of curses and blood magic. Its title was written in curling silver script, Metamorphosis of the Flesh, The Path of the Animagus. One evening, Lyanna found him hunched over it by candlelight, the flame flickering across his intent face. "Another project?" she asked, stepping softly into the study. Harry smiled faintly without looking up. "Not just any project. Something my father did. Something Sirius did. An animagus. I've wanted to try it all my life." Lyanna raised an eyebrow. "And why now?" He turned a page slowly. "Because it's one of the purest transformations. No potions, no rituals of blood. Just will, discipline, and the courage to remake yourself. If I can master this, I'll not only gain power, but freedom." She leaned against the table, scanning the inked diagrams of shifting limbs, half human, half animal. The book says it needs potions, doesn't it? Complicated ones. Harry chuckled wryly. Yes, and I don't have the ingredients for the animagus draft. Rare herbs that don't even grow in this world. So I'll do it the hard way, manually, step by step, through meditation and force of magic. Lyanna folded her arms. That sounds like torture. Good, Harry said, finally meeting her eyes. If it's hard, it will teach me more than any potion could. Harry's days became long and grueling. Each dawn, he sparred with the soldiers of Gryffindor Castle. Blades flashing, sweat pouring, muscles burning. He drilled his body with unarmed combat until his knuckles split, then healed them with magic and started again. Afterward, he trained his wards and skin changers, never neglecting the gifted children who looked to him as both master and protector. But every night, when the castle quieted, he turned to the animagus discipline. He began with meditation, sitting cross-legged on the cold stone floor of the solar, drawing his magic inward until he could feel the pulse of his own heartbeat. He focused on the flow of magic in his veins, then forced his imagination to picture himself not as a man but as something else. The book had warned, the first step is the mirror of the soul. In deep trance, one must discover the animal within, the reflection of one's truest nature. Night after night, Harry sat in darkness, waiting. The first visions were fleeting, a flash of flying, the curve of a wing, the glint of slitted emerald eyes, the echo of a roar. But each time he reached, the image slipped away, leaving him gasping with the strain. Frustration gnawed at him. One evening, Sirius, who had been watching quietly from the door, piped up with his clear, too-wise voice. Maybe you're trying too hard, Dad. Harry opened his eyes, panting. What do you mean? You always push, Sirius said simply, stepping closer. But animals don't push. They just are. Maybe you should listen instead. Harry blinked at him, startled, then laughed softly. You may be only 4 years old, Sirius, but sometimes you sound like a master sage. Sirius smiled, serious in his own way. I listen more than people think. Even as he struggled with the animagus path, Harry never let his guard down. He could feel it, a ripple of power beyond the frozen lands. When he stretched his magic too far north in meditation, the air turned cold, and the runes on the castle walls thrummed like taut strings. Lyanna noticed his unease. One evening as they walked the battlements, she said quietly, You're restless. There's something moving out there, Harry admitted, staring into the endless dark line of the wall's shadow. Something magical. Old. I don't know what it is yet, but it's strong. Stronger than you? Harry hesitated. Maybe. That's why I keep training. Magic, combat, and now the animagus transformation. I don't know who else walks this world. Lyanna. Sorcerers, witches, powers older than the wall. If they come, I need to be ready. She touched his hand briefly, grounding him. You already carry more weight than most kings. Don't let fear drive you. Let it sharpen you. Harry smiled faintly. That's what I'm trying to do. And so the days went on. The city of Thelmar grew. The newcomers found peace. The children played and learned. But in the quiet of night, while others dreamed, Harry pressed himself toward a transformation few had ever dared, certain that one day soon, the land would demand everything he had to give. Harry had always relied on Lyanna to tell him about the North. But Lyanna was not a woman who placed faith in myths. She believed in history, the deeds of men, the rise and fall of houses, the truth written in stone and song. By the firelight, she would recount the tales of the old Stark kings, grim men who had ruled from Winterfell since before the Undulls came. She spoke of their wars with the Marsh kings, whose crowns were made of reeds, and with the bloody Boltons who flayed their foes. She spoke of the Wolf's Den and the building of White Harbor, of the long battles to unite the North beneath a single banner. These are the stories worth remembering, Lyanna would say, her eyes bright with the weight of lineage. Stories of men, not phantoms. Harry listened, learned, and admired the depth of her memory. But it was the free folk who whispered the other stories, the ones Lyanna dismissed as fables. They spoke of the Night King, of White Walkers, of why the wall had been built not just as a border but as a prison. One old wildling woman, her face as weathered as the bark of a pine, told Harry by the hearth. They were made by the little green ones, the children of the forest, to fight the first men. But you don't make fire and not expect it to burn your hand. The walkers turned against all. That's why the wall stands. That's why we remember the cold that kills. Harry had felt the truth of it long before the tale. In his meditations, in his nightly vigils on the battlements, he could feel the stirrings of something vast and unnatural beyond the wall. The wards in Gryffindor Castle hummed faintly when his magic stretched northward, as though warning him. "White walkers," he muttered to himself one evening, turning the words over like black stones. "The Night King. If it's true, then it's them. They're the source of the disturbance." Lyanna, standing beside him, shook her head. "Harry, these are tales to frighten children. I have read every account I could find. The wall was built to defend against the free folk, not phantoms. My uncle always said." "Your uncle wasn't wrong," Harry cut in, his tone calm but certain. "But he didn't feel what I feel. Magic doesn't lie. Something out there is stirring. If it is what the wildlings say, then I cannot wait for it to come south. I'll have to confront it before it comes to destroy what we've built here." Lyanna frowned, folding her arms. "And how would you even begin? Even if such creatures exist, you'd march alone into the frozen waste." Harry's jaw tightened. "If I must." She reached out, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "You sound like a man courting death." "I'm a man defending life," he said softly, his eyes still fixed on the distant, endless horizon of the wall. That night, Harry sat alone in the solar, the Black family's animagus book open but forgotten at his side. His mind was not on transformation but on confrontation. The children of the forest, now extinct, had made the White Walkers with spells older than human memory. He imagined their magic, wild and green, twisting flesh and spirit into something colder than death. If even a shred of that power remained in the world, it would take everything he had, every skill, every weapon, every ounce of magic, to stand against it. Harry placed a hand on the wooden table, letting the wards of Gryffindor Castle sing faintly through his palm. He had built something worth protecting. Families, children, homes, temples, schools, a civilization rising beyond the wall where none had thought it possible. He could not allow it to be swept away in ice and shadow. "I will not wait for them to come to me," he whispered. "If the White Walkers walk again, then I will meet them on my own terms." Harry stood in the great hall at dawn, his cloak fastened and his weirwood staff in hand. The torches along the walls burned low, throwing long shadows across the carved beams. Lyanna stood before him, arms folded tightly, her lips pressed thin. Sirius sat on the steps just below the dais, his sharp eyes bright with something between pride and worry. "You're truly going alone?" Lyanna said at last, breaking the silence. Harry nodded. "Yes, this isn't a war party. If I bring soldiers, it will look like I march to fight. That's not what this is. I need to see, to know, before we commit to anything." "You could at least take scouts," Lyanna pressed, though her tone was softer now, not argument but fear. "I don't need scouts," Harry said simply. "I can travel farther, faster, and quieter alone than I ever could with a company. And if things go wrong, I can return to Narnia with a thought." Sirius leaned forward, his small hands clasped together. "But you'll fight them if you see them?" Harry's gaze softened. "No, Sirius. Not yet. This isn't a battle. It's a search. If the White Walkers are truly out there, I need to understand them first. What they are. What they want. Charging in with fire and steel won't save anyone." "But, Father," Sirius hesitated, then said with remarkable clarity for his years, "if they're coming, the Frostfang villages will fall first. The quarries, the settlement, the people." Harry crouched down before his son, resting a hand on his shoulder. "That's why I must go. If they are moving south, I'll know in time, and then we'll be ready. We won't be taken by surprise." Sirius swallowed hard, nodding, but his eyes still burned with a spark of excitement. The thrill that his father was marching toward the great mystery whispered in stories. Lyanna exhaled slowly. "No one here has ever seen you fight with all your strength. Not even me. You hide it, always. But I know, Harry. I know you're dangerous in ways the rest of us can't begin to understand." Harry gave her a faint smile. "That's why I go alone. Better one man bear the risk than 50. As word spread that Harry was leaving, the training yard filled with murmurs. Nearly 50 apprentices, children and youths alike, those who trained under his guidance as skin-changers and spellcasters, gathered in hushed groups. When Harry stepped among them, silence fell like snow. One boy of 14, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. "Master, let me come." You've taught us to fight, to hold our ground. We could help. Others quickly joined in, voices overlapping. Please, Master. We won't slow you down. We're ready. Harry raised his hand, and the clamor stilled at once. His gaze swept across their young faces, filled with loyalty and burning eagerness. You are my strength, Harry said. Each of you, but this is not your fight. Not yet. You are still learning, still growing. I am not going to wage war. I am going to see, to understand. When the time for battle comes, you will have your part. But this time you must stay. A murmur of disappointment rippled through them. One girl, no older than 10, clutched the small fox that often curled around her shoulders and whispered, Will you come back? Harry's eyes softened. Always. By midday, Harry stood at the northern gate of Thelmar. A small crowd had gathered. Apprentices, soldiers, townsfolk, even some of the newcomers who had once feared him. They did not cheer or call out. They only watched, quiet and solemn, as Harry adjusted his cloak against the wind. Lyanna stood closest. If you fall, she began. I won't, Harry said firmly. And if I do, I'll rise again. It was not bravado, not arrogance, but the steady voice of a man who had walked through fire and survived. Sirius ran to him, clutching his father's leg briefly before stepping back, his voice clear. Bring us knowledge, Father. That's worth more than any victory. Harry's heart swelled with pride at the boy's words. He ruffled his son's dark hair, then turned northward. Without another word, he began walking, the great Frostfang Mountains looming in the distance, the wall's shadow stretching long across the snowfields. The cold wind cut sharp, but Harry's steps never faltered. He was not the schoolboy who had once stumbled through magic and destiny. He was Harry Gryffindor, mage, warrior, builder of kingdoms. And he was going to face the fear that haunted the north alone. Chapter 53, A Carpet Toward the North. The morning he left Thelmar behind, Harry did not set out on foot alone as most believed. Instead, he descended into the deep stone cellars beneath Gryffindor Castle. Dust lay thick on the shelves and crates, and in the far corner, rolled carefully and bound with a strip of red leather, was something he had not touched in years. The enchanted carpet. Harry brushed the dust away with a flick of his hand. The fabric shimmered faintly in the torchlight, runes glimmering along the edges where he had stitched magic into every thread. He unrolled it slowly, the colors bright as the day he had finished it. Deep indigo, threaded with gold patterns that seemed to ripple like waves. When he had first enchanted it, Lyanna had been appalled. You'll not have me sitting on some flying rug like a madman, she'd said at the time, pale at the thought. I trust stone under my feet, Harry, not clouds. So the carpet had been rolled away, forgotten beneath barrels of dried apples and crates of mead. But now, with the journey north calling, Harry smiled faintly as he ran his hand across the fabric. It's time you saw the sky. At the edge of the outer wall of Thelmar, far from any watchful eyes, Harry spread the carpet over the snow. He stepped onto it, the old thrill bubbling up inside him like he was back at Hogwarts with his first broom. Up, he whispered. The carpet shivered, then rose smoothly into the air, lifting him above the trees. The cold wind struck his face, sharper than any broom ride, but steady. He laughed aloud, the sound carried away into the endless white. The carpet was different from a broom. A broom answered like a darting hawk, fast and sharp. The carpet was gentler, like steering a boat on invisible water. It rolled beneath him with a strange softness, tilting at his weight, catching every breath of wind like a sail. Not bad, Harry muttered, tugging gently on one corner. The carpet swooped left. He pressed down with his heel and it dipped smoothly. Not bad at all. For the first time in years, Harry allowed himself to fly for the sheer joy of it. He banked over frozen rivers, skimmed treetops with a hand trailing in the frost, soared high enough to watch the Frostfang peaks glow silver in the morning sun. As he flew, memories pressed close. In his world, enchanted carpets had been banned by the ministry long before his birth. He'd read the dusty law books. Flying carpets prohibited under Section 7 of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Act. Ridiculous, he had always thought. What harm could there be in weaving magic into fabric? He had grown up on brooms, yes. He loved them. Loved the thrill of a dive, the rush of Quidditch, the wind screaming in his ears. But he had always wondered what it would be like to fly differently. To soar not on a handle of twigs, but on something wide and steady, where you could lie back and watch the world roll by beneath you. Now, at last, he knew. and it was glorious. He could imagine Lyanna's scowl if she saw him now, hair whipping in the cold wind, grinning like a boy. She hated heights, hated flying, and had forbidden him from ever taking Sirius on the carpet. Too dangerous, she'd snapped once. A dragon is one thing, a rug? If you fall, you've nothing to hold on to. But Sirius had always begged. His son was as fascinated with the sky as Harry had ever been. When I come back, Harry whispered to the wind, I'll take you flying, Sirius, just you and me. No one to stop us. The carpet hummed beneath him, its runes glowing brighter as if eager to be used again. Harry angled it northward. The wall's shadow lay far away, but with this he could cover miles in minutes. He let himself relax as the snowfields unrolled beneath. Every so often he would stop, land, and test the controls, altering a rune here, smoothing the weave of enchantment there. He tinkered constantly, adjusting the carpet's stability and balance. This will do, he said, satisfied after a long, smooth glide. If the White Walkers are truly out there, I'll find them, and if they're coming south, I'll be the first to know. The wind whistled over the carpet as Harry pressed onward into the frozen unknown, a lone shadow soaring against the vast white silence of the north. The sun was already sliding down toward the jagged line of the Frostfangs when Harry guided the enchanted carpet lower. The sky was streaked in red and violet, the snow below glowing faintly in the last light. He knew better than to keep flying into nightfall. Shadows stretched long across the white wastes, and even a man as seasoned as he was had to respect the cold darkness of the north. He scanned the terrain below until he spotted a hollow near the edge of a frozen stream. It was sheltered by a cluster of pines and a small ridge of stone, enough to block the worst of the wind. With a gentle tug of his boot on the carpet's weave, Harry dipped low and touched down. He stepped off into the snow, boots crunching. This will do. A flick of his wrist unrolled the canvas bundle he had carried from the castle. It was no magical mansion, no bottomless trunk, no glittering wizard tent from a Quidditch World Cup. Just a simple free folk tent, the sort any wildling might use. Harry had chosen it deliberately. He didn't want glowing wards or enchanted walls to give him away. If anyone saw it from afar, they'd think only a free folk had stopped for the night. With a wave of his hand, the tent pitched itself, the wooden poles slotting into place with a satisfying thump, thump. The canvas stretched tight and solid, blending with the wild. Next, Harry summoned stones from the streambed. They flew to him, stacking neatly into a fire pit. He murmured a spell, and branches and deadwood snapped free from the forest edge, tumbling into a pile at his side. Accio firewood, he said casually, and a final load arrived, dry enough to burn. Soon the fire was crackling, throwing orange light across the snow. The shadows of the pines danced on the canvas of the tent. Harry crouched by the fire and unpacked a small pot from his satchel. A wave of his wand filled it with clean water, and into it he dropped strips of dried meat, a pinch of herbs, and a handful of root vegetables he had carried from Thelmar's markets. The stew simmered slowly, filling the hollow with a warm, savory scent. For the first time all day, Harry allowed himself to relax. He had covered more ground than he expected. The Frostfang peaks loomed closer now, dark teeth against the violet sky. By tomorrow he could reach the quarry village. He wasn't rushing. There was no need. If the White Walkers were moving, they weren't moving fast. The threat was distant still. He would rather arrive prepared than reckless. While the stew bubbled, he spread the carpet out near the firelight. His fingers traced the runes he had stitched years ago. Some glowed faintly, still strong, while others had dulled from disuse. Harry whispered fresh incantations, weaving more stability into the fabric. He tightened the wards that held the carpet's shape in midair, then adjusted its balance so it would respond more smoothly to sudden turns. The work was soothing, almost meditative. His father had tinkered with brooms in much the same way, carving and polishing them late into the night. Harry smiled faintly at the thought, though it was tinged with melancholy. The stew was ready by the time he had finished adjusting the carpet. Harry sat cross-legged by the fire, eating slowly, his eyes fixed on the north. Beyond those mountains lay silence and danger. He thought of Sirius, who had watched him leave with such bright eagerness, of the apprentices, whose voices had clamored to follow him. He had left them behind to keep them safe, but he knew the truth. If the White Walkers truly walked, none of them would remain untouched. Harry set his empty pot aside and warmed his hands at the fire. The crackle of burning would fill the night, broken only by the distant cry of a lone wolf. He breathed deeply, forcing calm into himself. He was not afraid. He had walked into darkness before and walked out again. And if the North truly hid the Night King and his servants, then it was better he faced them now, alone, than wait until their ice spilled south and swallowed all he had built. For now, though, he let the fire warm him, the carpet rest beside him, and the stars will slowly overhead. Tomorrow he would reach the quarry village. Tomorrow he would be one step closer to the truth. Harry had been drifting toward sleep, the fire crackling low, when the sound tore through the night. A scream, raw, panicked, unmistakably a woman's. Then shouts, the guttural roar of a man, and the sound of struggle. Harry's eyes snapped open. He was on his feet in an instant, his senses stretching outward like a net. His heart thudded once, steady and calm, as the night sharpened around him. There, northwest, across the ridge. Without hesitation, Harry sprinted through the snow, his cloak snapping behind him. His superhuman senses carried the sounds more clearly now. The woman's sobbing cries, the thud of heavy footsteps, the scrape of something massive dragging through the frost. He crested a rise, moonlight spilling over the scene below. A brute of a man was hauling a woman by the arm, nearly lifting her off her feet. He was tall, broad as an oak trunk, his ragged furs straining at the seams of his shoulders. In one hand, he gripped a massive club tipped with a slab of sharpened stone. His eyes gleamed cruelly as the woman struggled against him, her cries breaking against the cold air. Harry's jaw tightened. In a heartbeat, he was between them, boots crunching the snow as he blocked the man's path. "Let her go," Harry said evenly, his voice carrying like steel through the night. The brute snarled, clutching the woman tighter against his body. His breath steamed in the moonlight, hot and foul. "Mine," he growled, the word thick with claim and menace. The club swung, sudden and brutal, aimed at Harry's head. But Harry only shifted his weight. A simple sidestep, and the stone whistled harmlessly past him. The brute roared, surprised, and swung again with crushing force. Once more Harry slipped aside, his cloak stirring lightly as if the attack were nothing. The woman sobbed, terrified, her nails clawing at her captor's arm. In frustration, the brute shoved her away, freeing both hands to grip his weapon. The woman stumbled, then ran, her bare feet flashing pale against the snow. She did not flee far, though, just to a safe distance, her wide eyes fixed on the two figures squaring off beneath the moon. Harry's gaze never left his opponent. The man was strong, yes, his arms were ropes of muscle, his shoulders broad enough to block the stars, but strength meant little against speed and precision. The brute hefted his club, grinding his teeth. "You die tonight." Harry exhaled slowly, loosening his shoulders, calm as a still pond. "Try me." The brute roared again, swinging his club in a deadly arc. The stone tip whistled through the cold air, aimed squarely for Harry's skull. Harry moved like water, slipping just beyond the reach of the blow, his boots barely crunching the snow. The ground trembled when the weapon struck, shards of ice bursting up from the impact. The woman gasped, her hands clutched to her mouth, but Harry did not falter. His emerald eyes stayed locked on the man before him, measuring, calculating. Another swing came, wilder this time, and Harry stepped forward instead of back. The brute had not expected it. Harry slipped inside his reach, driving his fist square into the man's ribs. A sharp exhale burst from the brute's mouth, but he hardly staggered. Scars crisscrossed his face and neck, proof of a man who had survived 100 fights. This was no Green Raider. This was a warrior seasoned by blood and bone. Harry's heel lashed out next, slamming into the man's knee. The brute grunted, stumbling, but recovered quickly and shoved forward with a shoulder like a battering ram. Harry braced, absorbed the impact, and snapped his head to the side to avoid the club's wild backhand. The fight burned hot, each man a storm of movement under the pale moon. Harry's fists found their mark again and again, cheek, jaw, stomach, each strike precise, measured. Yet the brute endured, spitting blood and laughing, his voice a growl of defiance. "You hit like a wolf," he snarled. "But wolves bleed like men." Harry said nothing. His breath came steady, his body loose and coiled, while his opponent's swings grew heavier, slower, drunk with desperation. At last, the chance came. The brute lifted the massive club overhead for a killing strike. Harry surged forward, his hands snapping up to catch the haft. For a moment, they struggled, muscles straining, breath steaming in the frozen air. Then Harry's strength, raw, unyielding, wrenched the weapon free. The brute's eyes widened. Harry reversed the grip in a single motion and swung. The stone head cracked against the man's skull with a sickening thud. The brute staggered once, blood spilling from a gash across his brow. His eyes rolled back. Then he toppled forward, face first into the snow, the weight of his body shaking the ground as he fell still. Chapter 54. The Girl the North Claimed. The brute's body lay half-buried in the snow, steam rising faintly where his blood met the frost. Harry exhaled a long breath, his muscles loosening at last. He let the club fall aside with a dull thud. The fight finished. Turning, he saw the girl still frozen at a distance, her chest heaving, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "It's over," Harry called gently. "You can go back to your people." The girl's eyes darted around the empty snowfields. The shadows of the trees seemed darker now, the silence heavier. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She simply shook her head, trembling. Harry frowned. He had spoken too quickly. Sending her off into the night would be condemning her to risk. Wolves, more raiders, or worse. He had just pulled her from death. To abandon her now would be cruelty. "Listen," he said, softening his tone. "It's dangerous out here. I don't know if there are more of his kind nearby. Or worse, come with me to my camp. In the morning, you can go back safe." For a moment she hesitated, torn between fear of him and fear of the dark. Finally, she nodded, the smallest quick tilt of her head. "But enough." "Good," Harry said, relief flickering in his eyes. "Come on then. It's not far." The fire was still alive when they returned, flames licking warmly at the stones Harry had stacked. The tent stood solid against the ridge, plain and unremarkable. Harry had chosen it precisely because it blended in, but when the girl saw it, her brows knit. Her gaze slid past the canvas shelter almost without interest, then caught sharply on the iron pot still steaming beside the fire. Harry noticed it immediately. Her eyes lingered there, wide and hungry. "You've not seen a cooking pot before?" he asked. She shook her head, stepping closer as if drawn. "We roast on spits. On the fire." Harry smiled faintly. "Well, tonight you'll eat from a pot. There's stew left. Sit." He ladled what remained into a wooden bowl and passed it to her. She sniffed once, uncertain, then took a careful bite. Her eyes widened at the taste, and she quickly ate more, her hunger overtaking her caution. Harry sat across the fire, watching quietly. There was something striking about her, something beyond her youth. She was no older than 15, perhaps 16 at most. Her furs were torn, her face pale with fright. But when she looked up at him, he noticed her teeth first. Straight, even almost perfect. Among wildlings, Harry had rarely seen that. Most bore crooked smiles, gaps, or jagged edges worn by hard living. But hers was different. And when she allowed herself the smallest smile at the taste of the stew, it was beautiful. When the last of the food was gone, the girl set the bowl down carefully, as if it were something precious. She licked her lips and finally found her voice. "You saved me." Harry inclined his head. "No one deserves to be dragged off into the night." She hesitated, then straightened her back a little, trying to appear braver than she felt. "My name is Astrid." Harry gave a small nod. "I am Harry Gryffindor." At that, her eyes widened, shock breaking through her fear. "Harry Gryffindor?" she repeated, almost stumbling over the name. "Are you a kneeler? Are you from the Night's Watch?" Harry's lips curved faintly. "I am not from the Night's Watch, and I am not a kneeler." Astrid frowned, confused. "Then why such a name? Only kneelers have names like that. Fancy names. We have Astrid Score Edda. But you—" She shook her head. "Harry Gryffindor sounds like a lord." Harry chuckled softly, stirring the embers of the fire with a stick. "Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I promise you this. I'm no kneeler. I stand where I choose." Astrid tilted her head, still staring at him with a mixture of awe and suspicion. She pulled her furs tighter, though Harry noticed her shoulders had eased a little. The worst of her fear was ebbing away. The fire burned low, and the night grew colder. Harry rose and gestured toward the tent. "The night's too dangerous to sleep outside. Wolves hunt, and worse things than wolves." Astrid glanced at the shelter. Her brow furrowed, but she nodded faintly. Harry went in first, ducking beneath the flap. The inside was plain and enough space to two people, little more. He set his knife aside within easy reach, then stepped back to allow Astrid in. She hesitated at the threshold, then followed. Harry gestured to one side. "That's your area. I'll take the other." The girl obeyed silently, curling up under her fur. Harry lay down as well, careful to keep a respectful distance. For a while, he stared at the ceiling of the tent, listening to the soft rustle of fabric and the distant call of owls. Tomorrow, Frostfang village, he thought. Answers will begin there. Sleep claimed him slowly. When Harry woke, the sun was only just climbing over the ridge. Cold light spilled through the flap of the tent. He shifted slightly, only to realize something was draped across him. Astrid. She was still asleep, her face softened in slumber. One of her arms lay across his chest, and one leg was thrown carelessly over his, as though she had sought warmth in the night without thinking. Careful not to wake her, he eased himself back against the pillow, eyes drifting upward to the faint patterns on the tent's roof. The day was beginning, and ahead lay the Frostfangs, the quarry village, and perhaps the first whispers of the White Walkers. But for this moment, he simply lay still, letting the quiet warmth of the tent shelter them both from the chill of the northern dawn. When Astrid stirred awake the next morning, her first bleary glance was at Harry. She blinked, then quickly pulled her hand back from his chest as if burned. For a moment, Harry thought nothing of it. He sat up, fastening his cloak, already preparing to break camp. "You should head back to your people," Harry said matter-of-factly. "I've got places to be." Astrid sat up slowly, furs gathered tight around her shoulders. Her face hardened in a way that surprised him. "No," she said flatly. Harry frowned. "What do you mean, no?" Her chin lifted. "You stole me. From Score. That makes me yours. Your wife." Harry blinked at her, caught completely off guard. "What?" Astrid's eyes narrowed, suspicious of his reaction. "Don't you know our ways? A man who takes a woman become her husband. Always. You fought for me. You won. I am yours now." Harry dragged a hand through his hair, exasperated. "Astrid, I think you misunderstand. I wasn't fighting to claim you. I was stopping him from hurting you. That's all." But the girl only shook her head, her expression unyielding. "You can't undo it. It's done. I belong to you." Harry pinched the bridge of his nose. "I already have a wife, and a son." That only made her lean forward, eyes flashing with disbelief. "Then I'll be another. Many men have more than one wife. You are strong, stronger than any I've seen. You can keep us all." He sighed, trying to remain patient. "Astrid, I don't want another wife. I want you safe, that's all. Take the tent. Take weapons, trinkets, whatever you need. But go home." For the first time, her bravado cracked. Her lips trembled as she shook her head violently. "If you don't take me with you, I die. Do you want my death on your hands?" Harry's chest tightened. He hated the trap the words spun around him, hated that she knew exactly how to twist the knife. He could already see the truth in her eyes. If he abandoned her now, she would not survive. He cursed softly under his breath. "You're not leaving me any choice, are you?" A small, victorious smile curved her lips. "No, you are mine now, and I am yours." They set out together toward Frostfang village, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The mountains loomed closer, jagged peaks catching the morning sun. Harry kept his pace brisk, hoping silence would dissuade her. But Astrid was giddy. She walked close, too close, often brushing his arm or peering up at him with bright eyes. Every step she seemed to find an excuse to stay near. "Your cloak is warm," she said cheerfully. "It's Narnian wool," Harry replied curtly, stepping a little away. "You walk faster than anyone I've seen," she tried again. "I've had practice. Your hands are not scarred," she added, peering at them. "But they are strong. How many men have you killed?" Harry sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose again. "Enough." She smiled, entirely unbothered by his tone, as if his irritation rolled right off her. "Good. Then no one will take me from you." Harry said nothing, staring ahead at the road winding into the mountains. Inside, his thoughts churned. Lyanna is going to murder me when she hears about this, and yet, he could not bring himself to abandon Astrid. Not when she had looked at him with such certainty. Not when the alternative was death. Uncomfortable or not, Astrid walked beside him as though she had always belonged there, bright-eyed and fearless, as the Frostfang village came into view in the distance. The village at the edge of the Frostfangs was unlike anything Astrid had ever seen. Her eyes widened the moment she stepped into the clearing, where halls of solid stone rose from the earth like the bones of giants. These were not crude huts or half-buried lean-tos. They were long, low buildings with thick walls, each one large enough to house a dozen families. In the center of every hall, great fireplaces blazed, their smoke curling up into the cold air. The scent of roasting meat drifted out as villagers gathered with bowls in hand, sitting in warm circles. Stores of grain and smoked fish were stacked neatly against the walls, much of it carted in from Thelmar and Gnome City. For wildlings, who once scraped survival from snow and bone, this village was paradise. Astrid stopped in her tracks, her mouth parting in wonder. "Stone halls, warm fires, and food enough for all?" she whispered. "This is no village. This is heaven, and there are many of them." Harry gave a faint smile. "It's what happens when people work together, Astrid. When they choose more than just survival." But before he could say more, Astrid walked straight to the nearest gathering of villagers and boldly introduced herself. "I am Astrid," she declared, chin high, "wife of Harry." The hall went silent. Men glanced at each other, women raised their brows, and children stared wide-eyed. Within moments, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harry pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course she did. He stepped forward quickly, hands raised. "Listen, this is not what it sounds like. There's been a mistake." But the villagers crowded close, listening intently as Harry explained. He told them about the brute in the snow, about how he had stepped in only to protect Astrid, how he had meant nothing by it, how she had insisted it made them husband and wife. "I already have a wife," Harry finished firmly, "and a son. I never meant to claim another." He had expected understanding, perhaps even laughter at the absurdity of the situation. But instead, the villagers nodded solemnly, their sympathy falling on Astrid instead of him. "She's right," said an older woman, her voice edged with iron. "That is our custom. You took her. She belongs to you now. She can't go back," another man added. "If you leave her, she'll be shamed. Better she goes with you as your wife. You're our king. Should you not honor our ways too?" A chorus of agreement followed. Astrid looked up at Harry with shining eyes, as though the village itself had sealed her claim. Harry's jaw tightened. "In Narnia, stealing women is forbidden. It is against every law we live by." The elder woman shrugged. "This is not Narnia. Our ways are older than your kingdom, older than your walls. If you are king of the free folk as well, then you must honor us." The words struck him harder than he wanted to admit. He could not simply dismiss their traditions, not without alienating the very people he sought to unite. That night, Harry sat apart from the fire, his cloak pulled close, wrestling with the choice before him. Astrid was only a girl, yet in her eyes he saw no doubt, no hesitation. She truly believed she was bound to him, and the villagers had only reinforced it. When he returned to Thelmar, Lyanna would not take kindly to this, nor would Sirius. And yet, if he abandoned Astrid now, her fate would be as good as sealed. The next morning, Harry found her waiting at the edge of the village, eager to follow him north. "No," Harry said firmly. "You cannot come with me. I am going further north, to a place where even fire struggles to live. The land of always winter. It is no place for you." Astrid's face fell, but she stepped closer, desperate. "Then take me with you now. If I stay, I am nothing without you. You promised." Harry's gaze softened. "I promise you this, when I return, I will take you to Narnia. You will live there with warmth, with food, with safety. But I cannot take you where I go now. You would not survive." Her lip trembled, but she nodded at last. "You swear it?" "I swear it," Harry said. She let him go then, though not without a lingering glance that burned with stubborn certainty. Harry left her in the village, knowing it was the safest place for her until his return. Then, with the enchanted carpet unrolled once more, he rose into the pale northern sky. The frost fangs fell away beneath him, their peaks sharp as knives. Beyond them stretched the endless white. No roads, no forests, no warmth. The land of always winter waited. Harry pulled his cloak tighter, the carpet steady beneath him, his eyes narrowing against the icy wind. Somewhere out there he would find the truth of the White Walkers. And when he did, the fate of all he had built would depend on what he discovered. Chapter 55: Flame in the Land of Always Winter. The carpet soared over a world smothered in endless white. Snow stretched as far as Harry could see, broken only by jagged ridges of black stone and glaciers that glittered faintly under the pale moonlight. The cold here was different, sharp, biting, alive. Each breath he took seemed to scrape his lungs with frost. No man could live here, no village could stand. And yet Harry's skin prickled with the unmistakable sensation of magic. Old, alien, and hostile. He slowed the carpet, scanning the horizon. Then he saw it. A line of corpses trudging across the snow, their movements slow but relentless. Dozens, no, hundreds of them. Some were men, their faces gaunt and rotted, their armor rusted. Others were women and even children, their eyes empty, their mouths hanging slack. They moved in eerie silence, not a sound of breath or life among them. Harry's blood chilled. So the stories were true. He angled the carpet lower, wind whipping through his cloak. At the head of the corpse army stood a figure. Tall, lean, its skin pale as ice, its hair long and white as snow, and its eyes, 2 points of burning sapphire blue, bright and cold, locking instantly onto Harry. The White Walker tilted its head, then raised its hand. Ice gathered in its palm, hardening, stretching, until a spear of frozen crystal formed. With an inhuman howl, it hurled the spear skyward. Harry jerked the carpet sideways, the weapon cutting past him so close it froze the air against his cheek. It shattered against a cliffside far below with the sound of cracking glaciers. The walker did not pause. Another spear coalesced in its hand, grown from the very moisture of the air. With terrifying strength, it hurled again. This time, Harry did not dodge. He leapt. The carpet dipped as Harry hurled himself from it, plunging through the air. His hand snapped forward, and with a flash of scarlet fire, the sword of Gryffindor appeared in his grip. Its silver blade gleamed crimson in the pale light, hungry for battle. The spear ripped past him as he fell, close enough to ruffle his cloak, but Harry twisted midair, landing with a crash of snow only yards from the walker. The creature hissed, frost spilling from its mouth. It raised its icy weapon, but Harry was already moving. Gryffindor's might! Harry roared, swinging the sword in a two-handed arc. The blade cut through the walker's weapon like glass, biting deep into its torso. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the walker split apart with a sound like cracking ice. Its body shattered, fragments scattering across the snow in a spray of frost. Nothing remained but shards of ice melting into the ground. Harry stood panting, the sword humming faintly in his grip. Around him, the army of corpses faltered. Their glowing eyes flickered and dimmed, their bodies swaying uncertainly as if puppets whose strings had been cut. Then they collapsed. Hundreds of corpses toppled into the snow with soft thuds, limbs stiff, silence reclaiming the frozen waste. Harry knew better than to leave them lying. He raised his hand, sweeping in a great arc. Incendio Maxima! Flames roared to life, igniting the corpses in a wave of searing fire. Flesh and bone blackened and curled, smoke rising into the air as the horde burned. The stench of charred rot filled the cold night. Harry's eyes narrowed. Not this time. You won't be raised again. He watched grimly until the last corpse was ash and cinders. The snow around them melted into steaming pools. Only then did he allow himself to sheath the sword, its crimson gleam fading as it sank back into magic. The wind howled across the empty waste. Harry turned slowly, staring out at the endless horizon. One White Walker destroyed, one horde burned. But there would be more. He could feel it, dozens of others, scattered through the land of always winter, watching, waiting. The Night King himself still remained, and this was only a scout, a test. Harry exhaled, his breath fogging in the freezing air. So it begins. Harry did not turn back immediately. The land of always winter was too quiet, and his instincts urged him to press further. So he flew on, the carpet whispering low across endless snowfields. His senses spread wide. It wasn't long before he found them. 3 more White Walkers, each leading their own shambling horde. They were not strong, no more so than the first. They wielded their ice-forged spears with menace, but their movements were predictable, clumsy even. Against the sword of Gryffindor, they were nothing. Harry leapt into battle without hesitation. The silver blade cleaved through frozen armor and pale flesh alike, shattering the creatures as if they were made of glass. Each fell with the same sharp crack, their bodies breaking into shards that melted instantly upon touching the snow. Their armies of corpses collapsed with them, and Harry wasted no time. Fire roared from his wand, sweeping across the frozen fields, reducing the dead to ash. The flames crackled, hissing as they sank into the ice. When it was done, Harry stood in the center of a blackened scar on the white land, his breath misting in the frigid air. And then he felt it. The presence that had lurked like a shadow since he entered this place was withdrawing, moving back, retreating deeper into the heart of the frozen wilds. The White Walkers knew now. They had learned. They understand, Harry muttered, gripping the sword tighter. There's someone protecting this land. They won't rush again. They'll wait, watch, choose their moment. The thought chilled him more than the wind ever could. Harry exhaled and looked southward. I can't linger here, hunting them one by one. Narnia needs me. The people need me. If I fight every battle here alone, I'll bleed myself dry before the true war even begins. Still, he would not leave the land unguarded. From his enchanted trunk, Harry drew smooth stones carved with runes, wards of his own design, painstakingly crafted in the weeks before he left. He buried them deep in the snow, one after another, spreading them across ridges, valleys, and narrow passes where any army would have to march. Each stone thrummed faintly with his magic, a tether tied directly to him. If a White Walker or one of their undead crossed the wards, he would know. He would feel it no matter where he stood. When the last stone was placed, Harry brushed frost from his gloves and straightened. That will buy us time, he said to the wind. He rolled out the carpet once more, preparing to leave the cursed land behind. His heart yearned for Narnia, for warmth, for Lyanna and Sirius, for the life he had built. The storm quieted as suddenly as it had begun. The pressure of magic did not fade, however. It grew sharper, more focused, pulling Harry's senses toward a cluster of ancient weirwood trees half buried in snow. Their red leaves glistened wetly against the white, their carved faces watching in silence with weeping eyes. Harry guided the carpet lower, his hand on the sword of Gryffindor. But as he approached, he realized something. This was not the cold, hostile magic of the White Walkers. No, this was older, deeper, bound to the very roots of the land. He landed softly in the snow. The air was heavy with power. And then he saw them. From the gnarled roots of the largest weirwood tree, small figures began to emerge. Children, but not human children. Their skin was dappled like bark, their eyes large and golden, luminous in the gloom. The children of the forest. Thought extinct. Harry's breath caught. You still live. The nearest child tilted its head, regarding him curiously. Its voice was soft, like leaves in the wind. Few of us remain. We hid when men took the world. We hid. And we remembered. Another stepped forward, older, its face carved with lines of age. And we felt your fire, the dead you burned, the walker you slew. Harry tightened his grip on his sword but did not raise it. I thought you were gone. History says men destroyed you. The child's golden eyes flickered. History is written by those who build walls and call themselves kings. We are not gone. Not yet. Before Harry could reply, a deeper voice filled the clearing. Not from the children, but from the very heart of the weirwood itself. You have come far, Harry Gryffindor. Harry turned sharply. The face carved into the weirwood's trunk seemed to move, its lips parting, its eyes opening with eerie life. The voice was old, heavy with centuries of memory. You know my name, Harry said warily. I know much, the voice replied. I am the last green seer. Men call me the three-eyed raven. Through the roots of the weirwoods, I see the past, the present, and pieces of what may come. Harry felt the weight of the gaze upon him, as though the very tree were peering into his soul. Then you know why I'm here. The walkers are moving. Yes, the raven said, its voice a low rumble like distant thunder. The Night King stirs. He waits in the shadows of the storm, biding his time. You have wounded him, though you do not yet understand how. He will not come blindly now. Harry frowned, stepping closer to the tree. Then tell me how to end him, how to destroy the White Walkers before they sweep south. The children stirred uneasily, whispering among themselves, but the raven spoke again. You are not of this world, yet you carry its fate upon your shoulders. Fire is your strength, steel your ally. But the Night King was not made to be slain by fire or steel alone. He is bound to the magic that birthed him, the very magic of my people. Harry's jaw tightened. Then, if your people made him, help me unmake him. The raven's carved face seemed to sigh. It is not so simple. Magic that old does not yield easily. To end him, you must find the heart of his power, the place where he was made. Harry's thoughts raced. The children stabbed men with dragonglass, didn't they? That's how he was born. If I find that place, then you may find the key, the raven confirmed. But beware, Harry Gryffindor. The Night King is not your only enemy. Men, too, will fear you if you wield such fire. Kings, lords, even friends may turn against you. Harry's eyes hardened. They already have once. I survived. I'll survive again. The children watched him silently, as though measuring his worth. One of them stepped forward, holding out a sword, sharp and gleaming with ripples. Take this, the child whispered. It is Valerian steel sword. It is our gift. One day you may need it. Harry took the sword, its surface cold as death. The wind rose again, rattling the branches of the weirwood grove. Harry tucked the shard into his cloak and stepped back. I can't stay. My people need me, but I'll return. When the time comes, I'll be ready. The raven's voice followed him as he mounted the carpet once more. Remember, Harry Gryffindor. The past is written, the future uncertain. But you are the flame that does not belong to this world. And the flame may yet burn away the cold. As the carpet lifted into the frozen sky, Harry glanced once more at the children of the forest, their golden eyes glowing faintly beneath the weirwood. Then the trees fell away, and the land of always winter stretched out before him. By the time Harry's carpet descended into the Frostfang Quarry village, the air was filled with eager murmurs. Villagers poured from the stone halls to meet him, their breath clouding in the frosty air, their eyes wide with expectation. They had all known their king had flown north into the land of always winter. None knew what he had faced, but they understood it had been dangerous. The silence was thick as Harry dismounted, his cloak heavy with frost. Was it done? One man called out. Did you succeed, King Gryffindor? Harry looked at their anxious faces, then gave a slow nod. Partially, he admitted. Not a complete victory, but enough for now. Enough to keep the danger at bay. The crowd broke into cheers regardless, clapping one another on the back, their relief spilling into laughter and song. They didn't ask for details. It was enough for them to know their king had faced the nightmare of the North and returned alive. But not everyone was content to stand at a distance. Astrid rushed through the crowd, her furs clutched tightly around her shoulders. Her golden eyes were bright with relief. You came back, she said breathlessly, stepping so close she nearly collided with him. I told you I would, Harry replied evenly. She bit her lip, studying him. You could stay here with me. This village is safe. These people are Knicker. You can stay here, Harry said gently. You don't need to follow me. Here you'd be accepted. No one would call you wife or stranger unless you wished it. But Astrid shook her head fiercely, her jaw set with stubborn fire. No, I belong with you. The others can talk of customs all they want. My heart knows what it wants. I will not stay behind while you return to your hall of stone and fire. Harry sighed, already weary of the argument he had feared since he left her here. Astrid, Thelmar is not the wilds. It has its own laws, its own ways. You may not like it. Then I will learn them, she said simply. But I will not be left. By nightfall, Harry had made his choice. He could not leave her here, not when she was so determined, and not when the thought of her dying in shame haunted him. So once more he unrolled the enchanted carpet. Its magical threads shimmered faintly in the firelight as it rose into the air, steady and strong. Harry climbed aboard, and Astrid followed, clutching at the fabric with both hands as it lifted from the ground. Her face went pale at the sudden lurch, but she refused to let go. By the gods, she whispered, clinging tighter. Flying? I thought this was only a tale. Only the gods themselves could soar. Harry guided the carpet higher, the cold wind whipping their faces. Hold on. It's a long way to Thelmar. I am holding, Astrid said through gritted teeth, her knuckles white against the fabric. I will not fall. I will not let you go where I cannot follow. The carpet soared above the Frostfangs, the snowy peaks gleaming silver under the moonlight. Harry kept his eyes forward, his thoughts already on what awaited them in Thelmar. Lyanna, Sirius, the Council, and the questions that would rise the moment Astrid introduced herself again as his wife. Beside him, Astrid trembled, not from fear, but from exhilaration. She clutched the carpet tighter and laughed breathlessly into the rushing wind. If this is what it means to be yours, then let the whole world call me wife. Harry said nothing, only tightened his grip on the carpet's edge. The great city of Thelmar waiting in the distance like a beacon.